I want you to ask yourself, when you're alone, do you talk to yourself? Not just idle chatter, but real intentional conversation with the person who matters most, you. Because the truth is, the way you communicate with yourself shapes your results, your mindset, and the trajectory of your life. Most people never harness this power, and that's why they stay stuck, frustrated, or unfulfilled. But those who do, they develop traits that separate them from the crowd. Clarity, resilience, focus, and unstoppable motivation. Today, we're going to uncover these traits and show you how your own voice can become your greatest ally. You see, when you talk to yourself, many people might look at you strangely, maybe even think it's a little weird. But let me tell you something. Those moments when you're alone, when the world isn't watching, that's where champions are made. That's where the difference between someone who drifts through life and someone who grabs life by the reins is formed. Talking to yourself is not a weakness. It's not a sign that you're confused or that you can't handle your own mind. No, it is one of the most powerful tools you have. And the moment you recognize it, you will start seeing yourself in a completely different way. Think about it for a second. Every single great decision you've ever made, every goal you've ever accomplished, every challenge you've ever overcome, started with an internal conversation. It started with a voice inside your own head that said, I can do this. I will figure this out. I will not be stopped. That voice is your personal coach. It's your own inner leadership. And yet, so many people ignore it, drown it out with distractions, or worse, they let it speak negatively to them without ever realizing the power it holds. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment the power of intentional self-talk. When you're sitting alone, you have this opportunity to stand in front of yourself and be your own guide. You get to speak to yourself with clarity, with purpose, and with direction. And when you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. You start to program your mind for success. You begin to shift from being reactive to being proactive. You begin to see opportunities that others miss because your mind isn't cluttered with doubt and distraction. The key is that self-talk is not just mindless chatter. It's not a string of random thoughts bouncing around in your head. It's strategic, deliberate, and empowering. It's like being your own personal mentor, your own strategist, your own cheerleader, all rolled into one. Every time you remind yourself of your strengths, every time you challenge your excuses, every time you push yourself to step out of fear and into action, you are sharpening your edge. And let me be clear, life does not hand out opportunities to those who wait for validation from others. Life rewards those who are disciplined enough to coach themselves, to talk themselves into belief, into courage, into persistence. Some of you may be thinking, but isn't talking to myself kind of lonely? And here's the truth. Yes, it can feel that way at first, but loneliness is a small price to pay for mastery over your own mind. In fact, the more comfortable you become with your own voice, the less dependent you become on the opinions of others. The more you can trust yourself, the more decisive you become, and that decisiveness is what separates those who coast through life from those who create it on their own terms. Let's take it even deeper. When you talk to yourself, you are able to process things in real time. You are able to take complex, confusing situations and break them down into steps, into actions, into possibilities. You are able to ask yourself the questions that nobody else will ask and answer them in a way that moves you forward. Think about a moment in your life when you faced uncertainty. Maybe you were stuck in a job you didn't like, or maybe you were trying to make a big decision about your future. The people around you could give advice, but it was your inner conversation that truly determined the outcome. It was the voice that said, I will not settle. I will figure this out. I will keep pushing until I succeed. That is the voice that matters, because that is the voice that drives action. And here's the magic of it. The more you practice this, the stronger it becomes. Your mind begins to automatically scan for solutions instead of problems. Your inner dialogue starts to challenge excuses instead of indulging them. You begin to catch yourself thinking negative, unproductive thoughts, and instead of letting them take root, you replace them with intentional, powerful, forward-moving words. It's like lifting weights for your mind. Every conversation you have with yourself builds mental strength, emotional resilience, and unwavering focus. But notice this, self-talk isn't about pretending everything is perfect or ignoring challenges. It's not about creating a fantasy world where life is easy. No, it's about confronting reality with clarity and purpose. It's about acknowledging obstacles and then asking yourself, how will I overcome this? What is my plan? What is my next step? That is where the real transformation happens. The moment you can look at yourself in the mirror and speak to yourself honestly with encouragement and strategy is the moment you start turning potential into results. And here's a point that many people overlook. The world will never match the level of expectation you set for yourself. the world will always throw distractions, critics, and challenges your way. That's why self-talk is critical. It's the training ground where you prepare for life's battles. It's the place where you rehearse your mindset, your courage, and your resilience before the world tests you. When life does hit you with unexpected twists, you don't panic, you respond. You respond with the voice you've already cultivated inside, the one that says, I've got this, I can handle this, I will rise. Now, let me challenge you. Ask yourself this right now. How often do I actually take the time to speak to myself with intention? How often do I coach myself rather than criticize myself? How often do I lead myself instead of letting life lead me? These are the questions that define the difference between someone who drifts and someone who dominates their life. The beautiful truth is, this skill is available to anyone. You don't need permission. You don't need approval. You don't need someone else to tell you you're capable. All you need is a willingness to step into your own mind, take control of the conversation, and start using your voice intentionally. And when you do that consistently, when you make it a habit, the results are undeniable. Confidence grows, clarity sharpens, decisions become easier, fear loses its grip, and suddenly you're not just talking to yourself, you're shaping your destiny. So remember this, talking to yourself when you're alone is not a sign of weakness. It's a signal of someone who is willing to take responsibility, someone who is willing to lead, someone who is willing to grow. It's the first step toward becoming unstoppable. And the moment you understand that, the moment you embrace it fully, is the moment you step into a life where your own voice is the loudest and most powerful force guiding you forward. Because at the end of the day, the person you talk to when you're alone is the person who decides the course of your life. And that voice has the power to change everything. When you talk to yourself, something incredible starts to happen. You begin to realize that you are not just a passenger in your own life. You are the leader. Most people go through life letting others set the pace, make the decisions, and define what's possible for them. They wait for instructions, for permission, for someone to tell them what to do. But the moment you start speaking to yourself, the moment you consciously engage with your own thoughts and guide yourself, you begin to understand a truth that most never realize. You are capable of leading your own mind, your own emotions, and ultimately your own life. That is the power of self-leadership. Think about it. How often do we let other people determine how we feel, how we think, or how we act? We let bosses, colleagues, friends, even family members have a say in our mindset. We let the world's chaos dictate our decisions. And when that happens, we give away our most precious resource, our autonomy. But when you cultivate the habit of talking to yourself, you reclaim that power. You take responsibility for the direction of your life, and that is a game changer. That is what separates those who drift through life from those who build a future on their own terms. Self-talk is more than just words. It's a form of leadership practice. Every time you pause and ask yourself, what is the next right step? How can I handle this situation? What is my strategy? You are exercising your ability to lead. You are teaching your mind to think clearly, to prioritize, and to act decisively. And here's the thing, leaders aren't born, they are forged. Leadership is a skill and it starts internally. You cannot effectively lead others or lead in life if you cannot lead yourself first. Your inner voice is your first team, your first opportunity to practice what it means to guide, influence, and make decisions with confidence. And here's the beauty of it. When you practice self-leadership, you stop waiting for external validation. You no longer need someone else to approve your choices or define your worth. That voice inside of you becomes your compass. It tells you when to push, when to pause, when to take action, and when to step back and reflect. You become your own mentor, your own strategist, your own motivator. You develop an inner authority that is unshakable because it's built on clarity, intention, and self-responsibility. Let's get real for a moment. Life is unpredictable. Challenges appear when we least expect them. Obstacles test our patience, our courage, and our resolve. And if you are not prepared to lead yourself, if your internal dialogue is weak, negative, or inconsistent, those challenges will overwhelm you. But when you cultivate self-leadership, when you intentionally guide your thoughts and speak to yourself with purpose, you build resilience. You create a foundation that allows you to navigate uncertainty with confidence. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You become the captain of your own ship, charting the course no matter how stormy the waters get. Now, some people might think that talking to themselves is just a way to vent or make sense of emotions. And yes, that can be part of it. But real self-leadership goes deeper than that. It's about making decisions that align with your goals, your value, and your vision for the future. It's about holding yourself accountable. It's about setting the standard for how you show up in life and then coaching yourself to meet it every single day. When you develop this skill, you stop blaming others or circumstances. You take full ownership And that ownership is the gateway to personal power and extraordinary results. Think about the most successful people you know, not necessarily famous, but those who consistently achieve, those who live life on their own terms. What separates them from the average person is not luck, it's not talent alone. It's the ability to guide themselves when no one else is around. They have an internal dialogue that challenges excuses, inspires action, and holds them accountable to their highest standards. That is leadership, and the most powerful form of it starts within. And it's not just about achieving external success. It's about emotional mastery too. When you speak to yourself with intention, you are training your mind to respond rather than react. You are creating clarity in moments of confusion, calm in moments of chaos, and confidence in moments of doubt. Your inner voice becomes a source of direction and stability, and that is what allows you to lead effectively, not just in your career or relationships, but in every area of life. You begin to set your own standards, make your own rules, and define your own outcomes. Let me ask you this. How often do you pause to guide yourself? How often do you consciously set the tone for your thoughts and emotions before the world imposes its tone on you? This is what self-leadership is all about. It's about taking the driver's seat of your mind and steering your life with intention. And yes, it takes practice. Yes, it takes discipline. Yes, it sometimes feels uncomfortable because it forces you to confront your fears, your weaknesses, and your potential. But the reward is priceless. The more you lead yourself from within, the more capable you become in every interaction, every decision, and every challenge that life throws your way. Here's the truth. The world will always try to control you. There will always be opinions, distractions, and pressures. And if you let them, they will determine the course of your life. But when you master the art of talking to yourself, when you consistently guide your thoughts and decisions, you become immune to that chaos. You establish your own authority. You set your own pace. You decide what is possible and what is not. And you refuse to let external noise dictate your trajectory. The most powerful leaders, the most influential people are not those who speak the loudest. They are those who have mastered the voice inside them. They have developed the ability to listen to themselves, to coach themselves, and to lead themselves with clarity and conviction. And this skill is available to anyone who is willing to step into their own mind and take responsibility for the direction of their life. So I want you to take this seriously. Every conversation you have with yourself matters. Every question you ask, every encouragement you give, every decision you debate internally shapes your outcomes. Start practicing self-leadership today. Take control of your inner dialogue. Guide yourself with intention. Hold yourself accountable. Make your inner voice your most powerful ally, and watch as your life transforms, because the person you are learning to lead is the one who holds the keys to your future. Because the truth is simple. If you cannot lead yourself, you will always follow someone else. But when you master the ability to lead from within, there is nothing and no one who can stop you. When you talk to yourself, one of the most powerful things that happens is that you start processing your emotions faster than almost anyone else around you. Most people avoid their emotions, push them down, distract themselves with noise, or pretend everything is fine. They stay stuck in frustration, in doubt, in fear, because they never take the time to really deal with what's going on inside. But when you embrace self-talk, you confront your emotions head on. You give yourself the space to name them, to feel them, and to understand them. And when you do this consistently, you start moving through challenges instead of being paralyzed by them. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you been caught off guard by your own feelings? Maybe it was anger at someone who didn't deserve it, or anxiety about a decision you had to make, or sadness over a loss you weren't ready to face. Most people let these emotions build up, carry them around silently, and then wonder why they feel so drained, so frustrated, or so stuck. But when you start talking to yourself, you have the ability to process those emotions in real time. You can ask yourself, why do I feel this way? What is this emotion telling me? How can I use it to take action rather than hold me back? That ability alone sets you apart from the crowd. Processing your emotions doesn't mean you ignore reality or sugarcoat your situation. No, it means you face reality with clarity. It means you acknowledge what is happening inside you and then make a conscious decision about how you will respond. Most people react emotionally because they never practice this. They get swept away by frustration, fear, or self-doubt, and they allow those feelings to dictate their actions. But when you talk to yourself, you slow down that process. You give yourself the chance to analyze, to reason, and to choose a response that serves you rather than destroys you. And here's the thing. The faster you process your emotions, the stronger you become mentally. Every time you pause, every time you speak to yourself, Every time you examine a feeling and decide how to handle it, you are training your brain. You are teaching yourself resilience. You are creating a habit of clarity in the middle of chaos. This is a skill that cannot be taught in a classroom, cannot be learned from a book, and cannot be given by someone else. It must be developed from within through conscious self-dialogue and honest reflection. Let me ask you something. How often do you let your emotions control your decisions? How often have you acted impulsively because you were angry, anxious, or insecure? That's how most people live, reacting, spinning, caught up in a whirlwind of feeling without direction. But the moment you start using self-talk intentionally, you stop being a passenger in your own emotional world. You start leading it. You start guiding it. You start making decisions that are aligned with your goals, your values, and your vision, instead of letting your emotions hijack your life. Self-talk also gives you a tremendous advantage when it comes to clarity. Think about a time when you were overwhelmed, when you had too many problems, too many decisions, too much pressure. The mind becomes a mess, the heart feels heavy, and nothing seems manageable. Most people freeze in that moment or make impulsive choices, but when you talk to yourself, you begin to untangle the chaos. You break down the situation step by step. You prioritize what matters most. You clarify what you can control, what you cannot. You turn an emotional storm into a structured path forward. And that clarity is priceless because life will never stop throwing complexity at you. The faster you learn to process emotions, the faster you can respond instead of react, and the faster you move towards success instead of spinning in frustration. Now, some people shy away from self-talk because they think it's awkward, or they fear they might be overthinking. But the truth is, overthinking without intention is what paralyzes people. Self-talk with purpose is the antidote. It allows you to examine your emotions critically, to learn from them, and to turn them into fuel. Every time you feel frustration, you can ask, what is this trying to teach me? How can I use this to grow? Every time you feel fear, you can ask, what is the real risk here? And what action can I take to move forward despite it? Every time you feel doubt, you can ask, what evidence do I have of my capability and how can I remind myself of it? That is how self-talk transforms emotions from obstacles into tools. Emotional processing also strengthens your relationships and interactions with others. People who are in touch with their emotions and capable of handling them internally are far more composed, compassionate, and effective in their communication. When you talk to yourself, you gain insight into why you react the way you do, what triggers you, and how to respond intentionally rather than react unconsciously. That awareness spills over into every conversation, every negotiation, every decision you make around other people. You stop blaming others for how you feel and start taking full responsibility. And that is rare. That is powerful. That is what sets you apart. Another thing to understand is that talking to yourself is not just about handling negative emotions. It's also about amplifying positive ones. When you acknowledge your victories, when you remind yourself of your strengths, when you celebrate progress, even internally, you reinforce the neural pathways of confidence, motivation, and resilience. You teach your brain to notice opportunity rather than fear failure. You train yourself to expect success rather than anticipate disappointment. That internal reinforcement is what allows high performers to consistently outperform, even in challenging environments. And here's the ultimate takeaway. The more you engage in self-talk, the faster your emotional processing becomes. What once took hours, days, or even weeks to work through internally can now happen in minutes. You begin to think clearly under pressure. You begin to respond with precision instead of panic. You begin to use your emotions as guidance, not as chains. You become someone who can navigate life's highs and lows with grace, confidence, and unwavering clarity. So I challenge you right now, stop avoiding the conversations with yourself. Stop pushing away the feelings you don't want to face. Step into your own mind. Speak to yourself honestly. Ask the tough questions. Give yourself the guidance, the challenge, and the encouragement you need. The faster you process your emotions, the stronger you become. The more clarity you create, the more power you unlock, and the more capable you are of achieving extraordinary results in every area of your life. Because here's the truth, the people who master their emotions, who understand them, and who can process them quickly are the people who move through life with unstoppable momentum. They aren't slowed down by doubt, fear, or frustration. They use everything, every feeling, every thought, every challenge as fuel. And that ability begins with the voice inside you, guiding you, challenging you, and reminding you that you are capable of moving forward no matter what. When you talk to yourself, one of the most powerful transformations that occurs is your ability to turn chaos into clarity. Most people walk through life reacting to circumstances, to unexpected problems, to the noise of the world, and it leaves them overwhelmed, stressed, and frustrated. Their thoughts spiral, their emotions run wild, and their energy drains away before they even take action. But the moment you learn to speak to yourself intentionally, to process the chaos inside your own mind, something remarkable happens. You begin to organize your thoughts, prioritize what truly matters, and take decisive action with a sense of calm and purpose. That is a skill that separates the average person from someone who consistently achieves extraordinary results. Think about it. Life is messy. Life is complicated. It throws curveballs when we least expect them. Most people wake up and react. They respond to emails, phone calls, problems at work, unexpected conflicts, personal challenges, without ever taking the time to pause and think. And in that reaction, they lose their clarity, they lose their focus, and they lose control. But when you take the time to talk to yourself, even if it's just for a few minutes a day, you give your brain the opportunity to step back, to assess, to simplify, and to create a roadmap. What was once overwhelming becomes manageable. What was once confusing becomes organized. And what was once paralyzing becomes actionable. Here's the key. When you turn chaos into clarity, you are not ignoring the difficulty of life. You are not pretending that problems don't exist. You are not creating a fantasy world where everything is easy. No, you are confronting the reality of your situation, breaking it down and asking yourself, what is the most important thing right now? What is my next step? What can I control and what must I let go of? That process is what builds mental strength. That process is what gives you power over your circumstances rather than letting circumstances have power over you. Most people underestimate the impact of this practice. They underestimate the effect of simply speaking aloud to themselves, of organizing their thoughts verbally, of creating a structure in their mind. But think about it. When you articulate a problem, when you talk through a decision, when you challenge your fears or excuses, you create mental pathways that allow you to see solutions that were invisible before. What seemed confusing suddenly has a pattern. What seemed overwhelming suddenly has steps. And what seemed impossible suddenly becomes possible. Self-talk also allows you to distance yourself from the emotional noise that clouds judgment. Chaos often isn't just external, it's internal. It's the mix of fear, doubt, frustration, and anxiety that most people carry around without realizing it. They react emotionally to situations because they haven't separated the signal from the noise. But when you talk to yourself, you create space between your mind and your emotions. You begin to observe what is happening, analyze it, and make decisions from a place of rational clarity. That is what makes leaders, what makes high performers, what makes someone unstoppable in life. And here's the truth. The more you practice this, the more automatic it becomes. At first, it might feel strange to pause and speak to yourself, to map out your thoughts out loud. But as you develop the habit, you start noticing patterns in your thinking. You begin identifying what distracts you, what drains your energy, and what actually moves you forward. You begin to take control of your mental landscape instead of letting it control you. And that is transformational. Because once your mind is clear, your actions are focused, your energy is aligned, and your results accelerate. Another important aspect is decision-making. When chaos reigns, decisions feel heavy, stressful, and exhausting. But when you talk through your options, weigh the risks and rewards internally, and clarify your priorities, the decisions you make become stronger, faster, and more aligned with your goals. You stop wasting time on uncertainty. You stop second-guessing yourself endlessly. You develop a confidence that comes not from arrogance, but from preparation, clarity, and the repeated practice of guiding yourself through complexity. That is a rare skill, and it is one that starts with your inner dialogue. Think about your day-to-day life. How often do you face situations that feel overwhelming? How often do you feel pulled in 100 directions at once, with responsibilities, expectations, and pressures piling up? Most people respond with stress, with frustration, with avoidance. But when you speak to yourself with intention, you immediately create order. You break down tasks, prioritize what is urgent and important, and create a plan to move forward. You take control of what you can, and you release what you cannot. That simple practice turns chaos into clarity, overwhelm into focus, and paralysis into action. This practice also gives you a sense of peace that most people never experience. When your mind is clear, when your thoughts are organized, when your priorities are defined, stress loses its grip. You start moving through life with a calm, measured confidence that comes from knowing you are in control of your own mind. You are no longer reacting to external pressures. You are responding to life from a place of strength. And that is incredibly powerful because the world will always throw chaos at you. There will always be unexpected events, difficult people, and unpredictable outcomes. But if you have the skill of turning chaos into clarity, you will navigate every situation with focus, energy, and efficiency. And here's the thing that most people never realize. Chaos is not the enemy. In fact, it can be a gift. It forces you to confront your thinking, your priorities, and your ability to act. But you must use your inner voice to harness it. You move. Talk to yourself to extract the lessons, the clarity, and the solutions that lie hidden within the challenge. Most people shy away from chaos, but those who embrace it through intentional self-talk emerge stronger, smarter, and more capable every single time. The moment you master this, you stop being overwhelmed by life. You stop feeling trapped by circumstances. You stop allowing external forces to dictate your focus, your energy, or your mindset. You create order within yourself first, and that internal order translates into every area of your life. Your work becomes more productive, your relationships become more intentional, and your personal growth accelerates. Clarity becomes your superpower, and it all starts with speaking to yourself, even when no one else is around to hear it. So here's the challenge. Start today. The next time you feel stressed, overwhelmed, or uncertain, pause, step back, speak to yourself, map out your thoughts, break down the chaos into manageable pieces. Ask yourself what matters most, what you can control, and what your next step should be. Practice this consistently and watch how your mind transforms. Watch how your focus sharpens. Watch how your energy aligns. Watch how your life starts moving forward with purpose, precision, and unstoppable momentum, because the truth is simple. The person who can turn chaos into clarity controls their destiny, and the voice that guides them is the one that speaks within every time you talk to yourself, every time you pause and challenge your own excuses, encourage yourself to take action, or remind yourself of your capabilities. You are building something incredibly powerful, mental resilience. Most people think resilience is something you either have or you don't. They think it's a trait that is innate, that comes naturally to some and is impossible for others. But that's not true. Resilience is a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed, strengthened, and honed through consistent practice. And one of the most effective ways to do that is through the conversations you have with yourself when no one else is around. Think about it for a second. Life is going to test you. Life is going to throw challenges in your path. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or how talented you are. Obstacles are inevitable. But the difference between someone who is crushed by challenges and someone who rises above them is the ability to bounce back, to recover, and to keep moving forward. That ability doesn't come from luck. It comes from mental resilience. And that resilience is built one internal conversation at a time. When you talk to yourself with intention, you are creating a mental rehearsal for life. You are preparing yourself to respond to adversity rather than be overwhelmed by it. Every time you remind yourself, I can handle this, I will figure this out, I will keep moving forward, you are training your brain to respond with strength instead of fear. You are creating neural pathways that make it easier to stay calm, focused, and determined when life gets difficult. And the more you practice this, the more automatic it becomes. Resilience becomes not just something you do, but something you are. Consider the people who achieve extraordinary results in life. What sets them apart is not that they never fail, but that they fail differently. They don't let failure define them or defeat them. Instead, they analyze it, learn from it, and use it as fuel to grow. And the foundation for that comes from self-talk. When you take the time to speak to yourself during setbacks, to acknowledge what went wrong, and to remind yourself that you are capable of overcoming it, you are building a mindset that refuses to give up. You are creating an inner strength that cannot be shaken by temporary setbacks. Now, resilience is not just about enduring pain or surviving difficulties. It's about transforming them into advantage. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to strengthen your mind. Every obstacle is a chance to prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you thought. And the moment you start talking to yourself intentionally, you accelerate this process. You begin to see challenges, not as threats, but as tests. Tests of your determination, your creativity, and your commitment to growth. That perspective alone changes how you experience life. It shifts you from feeling like a victim of circumstances to feeling like a champion of your own journey. And here's something many people overlook. Mental resilience is contagious. It affects not only your ability to handle personal challenges, but also how you show up in relationships, at work, and in leadership. When you are resilient internally, you model strength for others. You inspire confidence. You create a presence that commands respect. But none of that happens without self-talk, without the repeated practice of reinforcing your own mind, of speaking words of courage, clarity, and determination to yourself consistently. Think about your daily life. How often do you face moments of doubt, frustration, or fear? Most people allow these emotions to dictate their actions. They freeze, procrastinate, or react impulsively. But the person who talks to themselves intentionally has a different approach. When doubt arises, they remind themselves of their past victories, of the challenges they have already overcome, and of the skills and strengths they possess. When fear appears, they confront it with logic, strategy, and self-encouragement. When frustration builds, they channel it into problem solving instead of complaining or giving up. This consistent internal coaching. NG is what builds resilience over time, and it is far more powerful than any external support system. The beauty of self-talk is that it allows you to rehearse difficult situations before they happen. You can imagine challenges, think through potential responses, and prepare yourself mentally for whatever comes your way. This is not daydreaming, it's strategic preparation, it's mental conditioning, and when the real challenge appears, you are ready. Your mind knows how to respond, your emotions are under control, your actions are intentional. That is resilience in action, and it begins with the words you say to yourself when no one else is watching. And here's the ultimate truth: resilience is cumulative. Every time you speak to yourself with courage, with clarity, with determination, you add another layer of strength to your mental foundation. Over time, challenges that once seemed impossible become manageable. Setbacks that would have crushed your confidence now become opportunities to prove your own capability. Your mind becomes like a muscle. It grows stronger each time it is tested, each time it is exercised, each time it is guided intentionally. It's also important to recognize that building mental resilience requires honesty. It requires confronting your weaknesses, acknowledging your mistakes, and speaking to yourself with both compassion and challenge. It's not about pretending you're perfect or that challenges don't exist. It's about facing reality and choosing to respond with strength and determination anyway. That balance between honesty and empowerment is what allows your self-talk to become a tool for true resilience rather than just empty motivation. So I want you to ask yourself, how often do I take the time to speak to myself in a way that builds strength rather than tearing it down? How often do I coach myself through challenges instead of avoiding them? How often do I reinforce my own capability, my own determination, and my own courage? These are the questions that determine whether you will develop the resilience necessary to thrive in life or remain at the mercy of circumstances. Because here's the simple truth: the person who consistently talks to themselves with intention, who challenges excuses, encourages action, and reinforces belief in their own capabilities builds a mental toughness that is unstoppable. They are not immune to setbacks. They will face challenges, failures, and obstacles like everyone else, but they recover faster, they learn more quickly, and they keep moving forward when others stop. That is the difference between mediocrity and extraordinary results, between frustration and fulfillment, between giving up and going all the way. And the power of this practice is available to anyone who chooses to take it seriously. It doesn't require external validation, approval, or recognition. It doesn't require perfect circumstances or luck. All it requires is your willingness to engage with yourself, to speak with intention, to challenge yourself, and to refuse to let adversity define your limits. That is the essence of mental resilience. That is the skill that will carry you through every challenge, every obstacle, and every opportunity in life. Because at the end of the day, the person who builds mental resilience through self-talk is the person who controls their destiny, and the voice guiding them is the one they cultivate within. When you talk to yourself, one of the most powerful shifts that occurs is the realization that you don't have to wait for motivation. You create it. Most people think motivation is something that happens to them, something that arrives when the timing is right, when the circumstances are perfect, or when someone else inspires them. But that's a lie. Motivation is not a gift. It's not an external force that comes and goes at random. Motivation is a skill. It's something you generate internally, and it begins with the conversations you have with yourself. Think about it. How many times have you said, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I'll do it when I feel ready"? That's the voice of procrastination disguised as reason. That's the voice of waiting for an external push that may never come. And the truth is, most people spend their entire lives waiting for motivation instead of learning how to create it. But when you talk to yourself intentionally, you stop waiting. You take control. You fuel your own drive. You generate the energy, the focus, and the determination to act even when conditions aren't perfect. That is what separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who simply wish they could. The key is understanding that motivation is not a feeling. It's a decision. Every time you tell yourself, I will do this, I will take action now, I will push past fear and doubt, you are creating your own momentum. You are teaching your mind that action comes first and feelings follow. Most people get it backwards. They wait to feel motivated, and as a result, they never move. But the person who talks to themselves with intention understands that movement creates motivation, that action generates energy, that doing something, even a small step, activates the power within. When you speak to yourself intentionally, you also create a clear vision of what you want. Motivation thrives on clarity. It is difficult to feel inspired if you don't know exactly what you are aiming for. That is why self-talk is so crucial. When you articulate your goals, your values, and your vision to yourself, you are fueling your internal engine. You are creating a reason to act. You are giving yourself the why that drives the how. And the more clearly you can communicate with yourself about what matters, the more unstoppable your motivation becomes. Consider the moments when you have been at your most productive, most determined, or most focused. Chances are it was not because someone told you to be motivated. It was because you had an internal conversation with yourself that ignited action. Maybe you reminded yourself of your purpose. Maybe you challenged your own excuses. Maybe you visualized the outcome you wanted and felt a surge of energy because you were speaking directly to your potential. That is the magic of self-talk. It turns abstract desire into concrete action, and it transforms fleeting inspiration into lasting momentum. And here's the thing that most people don't realize. Self-generated motivation is sustainable. External motivators, praise, rewards, recognition can only take you so far. They are fleeting, they depend on someone else, and the moment they disappear, so does your drive. But when you cultivate the ability to motivate yourself through intentional internal dialogue, your energy becomes self-sufficient. You stop relying on circumstances, external validation, or luck. You create a system within yourself that continuously fuels your action, no matter what life throws at you. Let's talk about fear for a moment. Fear is one of the biggest enemies of motivation. Most people avoid challenges, postpone decisions, and hesitate to act because they are afraid of failure, rejection, or embarrassment. But when you talk to yourself, you can confront that fear head on. You can say, I am capable. I can handle this. I will act even if it feels uncomfortable. Self-talk allows you to reframe fear as a signal of growth, as a marker that you are stepping outside of your comfort zone, as evidence that you are moving towards something significant. And when fear is reframed in this way, it no longer paralyzes. It motivates. Another critical aspect is accountability. Motivation is easy to lose when you rely solely on external forces. But when you speak to yourself, you hold yourself accountable. You commit to action. You remind yourself of the consequences of inaction and the rewards of persistence. You set your own standard and refuse to settle for less. And this internal accountability is far more powerful than any external pressure because it comes from a place of self-respect and personal responsibility. You begin to understand that your progress, your success, and your fulfillment are in your own hands. And that realization alone generates unstoppable drive. It's also important to realize that motivation builds momentum. Every time you take a step, no matter how small, and reinforce it with self-talk, you create a ripple effect. One action leads to another. One success fuels the next. And before long, you are moving with speed, confidence, and purpose. But that initial spark, the decision to act when you didn't feel like it, always comes from the voice inside you. It always begins with the internal dialogue that refuses to accept excuses, delays, or hesitation. Think about the opportunities in your life. They are not going to wait for you to feel motivated. They are not going to slow down because you are uncertain or hesitant. Life rewards action, decisiveness, and courage. And the people who consistently seize those opportunities are the people who have learned how to generate their own motivation. They have trained themselves to speak to themselves in ways that create energy, focus, and commitment, even when the external world offers no incentive. That is how you move from wishing to achieving, from dreaming to doing, from waiting to winning. And here's the ultimate truth. Motivation is not an external commodity. It is an internal force that you cultivate through deliberate practice, through intentional self-talk, through the repeated habit of guiding yourself, challenging yourself, and fueling your own energy. Every time you remind yourself of your purpose, every time you speak words of courage, every time you challenge your excuses, you are generating a power that cannot be taken away. That power is unstoppable because it comes from within. So I want you to ask yourself right now, how often do I wait for motivation instead of creating it? How often do I sit idle because I don't feel ready? How often do I let circumstances dictate my energy instead of generating it from within? The answers to these questions determine whether you will achieve your goals or remain stuck in frustration. Because the truth is simple. The person who generates their own motivation never waits. They don't need perfect conditions, external approval, or ideal timing. They create their own momentum. They act first, feel inspired second, and build unstoppable momentum through consistent internal dialogue. That is how extraordinary results are created. That is how dreams become reality. That is how success is achieved day after day, step after step. When you talk to yourself, one of the most remarkable outcomes is the development of self-awareness. Most people go through life without ever truly understanding themselves. They react without reflection, make decisions without clarity, and allow their habits, fears, and emotions to drive them unconsciously. They are at the mercy of circumstances, at the mercy of other people's expectations, and at the mercy of fleeting impulses. But when you take the time to engage in intentional self-talk, you are forcing yourself to look inward, to examine your thoughts, your feelings, your motivations, and your actions. And that level of self-awareness is rare. It is what sets you apart. Self-awareness is not just about knowing what you feel, it's about understanding why you feel it, how it influences your decisions, and how it impacts your behavior. Most people spend a lifetime reacting to external stimuli without ever questioning the root of their responses. They get angry, frustrated, anxious, or discouraged, and they wonder why life seems so difficult. But when you cultivate the habit of speaking to yourself, you start asking the hard questions. Why am I reacting this way? What is driving this emotion? What am I avoiding? What am I holding onto that no longer serves me? That is the beginning of true insight, and insight is the foundation of growth. Think about how much clarity you gain when you examine your own mind. You start recognizing patterns in your thinking, habits in your behavior, and triggers in your emotions. You notice when you are making excuses, when you are settling for less, or when you are allowing fear to dictate your choices. And the moment you become aware of these patterns, you gain the power to change them. You gain the power to interrupt destructive cycles and replace them with intentional, empowering actions. That is the difference between living unconsciously and living deliberately. Self-awareness also allows you to make better decisions. Life is full of choices, and most people make decisions based on impulse, emotion, or habit. But when you speak to yourself with intention, you create a pause, a space to reflect, to consider consequences, to weigh options, and to act with clarity. You can ask yourself, does this align with my goals? Does this reflect my values? Will this move me closer to the life I want to create? That pause, that reflection is the very essence of self-awareness. It transforms reactive behavior into proactive action and ensures that your choices serve your highest interests. Another critical aspect of self-awareness is understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Many people go through life unaware of their true potential or blind to their limitations. They struggle in areas where they could excel and waste energy on things that do not serve them. But when you talk to yourself, you start evaluating your capabilities honestly. You recognize what you do well, where you excel, and what brings out your best performance. You also see where you need growth, what habits hold you back, and what skills you need to develop. That insight allows you to focus your energy on high leverage actions that create meaningful results. Self-awareness also enhances emotional intelligence. When you understand yourself, you begin to understand others. When you are aware of your own triggers, your own fears, and your own motivations, you are better equipped to navigate relationships, communicate effectively, and lead with empathy. People who lack self-awareness often project their unresolved emotions onto others, misinterpret intentions, and react defensively. But the person who cultivates self-awareness through self-talk gains perspective, patience, and composure. They can respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. They can influence and inspire rather than control and dominate. One of the most powerful aspects of self-awareness is the ability to recognize and challenge limiting beliefs. Most people carry subconscious narratives about themselves that dictate their potential. They believe they are not smart enough, capable enough, or deserving enough. These beliefs shape their actions, their confidence, and their results. But when you talk to yourself, you bring those beliefs into the light. You question them, you challenge them, you replace them with empowering truths. You say, I am capable, I am resourceful, I am worthy of success. And as you reinforce these messages consistently, your beliefs begin to align with your highest potential, transforming what you once thought impossible into reality. Self-awareness also provides the gift of personal accountability. Most people avoid looking inward because it is uncomfortable. They don't want to confront their mistakes, their shortcomings, or their failures. But when you speak to yourself intentionally, you can hold yourself accountable without shame or blame. You can acknowledge where you fell short, analyze why it happened, and determine what actions are necessary to move forward. That accountability builds integrity and trust in yourself. It ensures that your future actions are aligned with your goals, values, and purpose. And perhaps one of the most subtle but powerful outcomes of self-awareness is freedom. The more you understand yourself, the less you are controlled by the opinions of others, the expectations of society, or the pressures of circumstance. You stop seeking validation externally because you have cultivated validation internally. You know who you are. You understand what you want. You have clarity about what matters. And that freedom allows you to pursue your path with confidence, courage, and unwavering focus. Think about your daily interactions. How often do you respond reactively because you haven't paused to understand yourself first? How often do you feel frustrated, misunderstood, or misaligned? The difference between reacting unconsciously and responding consciously comes down to self-awareness. When you talk to yourself, you are constantly checking in, evaluating, and recalibrating. You are creating a level of insight and intentionality that most people never achieve, and that insight empowers you to navigate life with clarity, precision, and effectiveness. Self-awareness also fuels continuous growth. When you regularly engage with your inner voice, you are constantly learning about yourself. You identify areas for improvement, recognize moments of progress, and adjust your course when necessary. You are not stagnant. You are not drifting. You are evolving. Every conversation with yourself becomes an opportunity to deepen understanding, refine habits, and strengthen character. And over time, that growth compounds, creating a person who is not only self-aware, but also wise, disciplined, and resilient. Finally, self-awareness allows you to live intentionally. Life is too short to drift without purpose, to act without reflection, or to exist without clarity. By talking to yourself, you are choosing to understand your mind, your emotions, and your actions. You are choosing to align your behavior with your values and goals. You are choosing to be conscious of the path you walk and the impact you create. That intentionality transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for growth, learning, and achievement. So I want you to ask yourself right now, how well do I know myself? How often do I reflect, question, and challenge my own thoughts and emotions? How often do I take the time to understand what drives me, what holds me back, and what truly matters? These questions are not just exercises in introspection. They are the foundation of self-awareness, the skill that enables growth, clarity, and success. Because the truth is simple. The more self-aware you become, the more powerful you are. And the voice guiding you toward that awareness is the one you cultivate within. When you talk to yourself, one of the most powerful outcomes is the development of unwavering focus. In a world full of distractions, noise, and constant demands on your attention, focus has become one of the rarest and most valuable skills you can cultivate. Most people allow their attention to be hijacked by emails, social media, opinions of others, and a constant barrage of external pressures. They drift through their days, reacting to whatever catches their eye or ear, and they wonder why their results don't match their potential. But when you intentionally speak to yourself, when you guide your mind with clear, deliberate direction, you create a laser-like focus that cuts through the chaos and zeroes in on what truly matters. Think about it for a moment. Every major achievement, every moment of excellence, every breakthrough in history was the result of focus. Not talent alone, not luck alone, not opportunity alone, but focus. The ability to direct energy, thoughts, and actions toward a single goal without being pulled in 100 directions at once. And the secret to that focus is the internal dialogue you maintain. When you speak to yourself intentionally, you remind yourself of your priorities. You clarify what is urgent, what is important, and what deserves your attention right now. That clarity eliminates wasted energy and creates a channel for unstoppable momentum. Most people underestimate the power of internal guidance. They rely on external reminders, to-do lists, or even other people to keep them on track. But true focus comes from the voice inside you. It comes from the repeated practice of speaking to yourself with intention, reinforcing your goals, and consistently reminding yourself what matters most. That voice becomes your compass. It tells you when to act, when to pause, and when to redirect your energy. Without it, your mind drifts and your results suffer. With it, you gain precision, consistency, and the ability to execute at a level far beyond the average person. And here's the thing. Focus is not just about doing more. It's about doing what matters. Most people mistake busyness for productivity. They fill their days with tasks that are urgent but not important, and they convince themselves they are moving forward. But when you cultivate focus through self-talk, you begin to discern between what truly drives progress and what is just noise. You begin asking yourself, does this move me closer to my goal? Is this aligned with my purpose? Where should I invest my energy right now? That discipline of attention is what separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who settle for mediocrity. Self-talk also strengthens your ability to resist distractions. The mind is naturally drawn to novelty, to stimulation, to anything that promises quick satisfaction. Most people are at the mercy of these impulses, constantly checking their phones, shifting between tasks, or giving their attention to irrelevant matters. But when you train yourself to speak to your mind intentionally, to remind yourself of your purpose and to reinforce your priorities, you build resistance to distraction. You create mental boundaries that protect your energy, your time, and your focus. You begin to move with intention instead of drift with impulse, and that consistency compounds over time into extraordinary results. Focus is also essential for creativity and problem solving. The more your attention is scattered, the harder it is to think deeply, see patterns, and generate solutions. But when you are focused, when your mind is clear and guided by intentional self-talk, you can enter a state of flow where ideas connect effortlessly, decisions become obvious, and breakthroughs occur naturally. That is why some of the greatest innovations, the most brilliant solutions, and the most profound achievements come from people who have mastered the art of focus. They are not necessarily smarter or luckier. They are disciplined, intentional, and relentless in directing their energy toward what truly matters. Another crucial aspect is emotional focus. Most people let their emotions hijack their attention. Frustration, anger, worry, and fear scatter their energy and cloud their judgment. But when you engage in self-talk, you can manage your emotional state. You remind yourself to stay calm, to think clearly, and to direct your energy toward productive action. You acknowledge your feelings, but refuse to let them control your focus. That emotional discipline is what allows high performers to stay on course, even when circumstances are chaotic, challenging, or unpredictable. Focus also enables you to achieve consistency. One brilliant effort is powerful, but it is repeated, intentional effort that creates lasting results. When you talk to yourself, when you guide your actions with clear intention, you reinforce the habits and behaviors that lead to consistent performance. You reduce errors, you stay aligned with your goals, and you create momentum that grows over time. That is why champions, leaders, and high achievers emphasize focus, not once, but continuously. Focus is the engine that transforms potential into results, and self-talk is the fuel that powers it. Think about your day-to-day life. How often do you start with a goal but end with chaos? How often do distractions pull you away from what matters most? Most people settle into this pattern because they haven't trained themselves to guide their own attention. But the person who talks to themselves intentionally takes command of their mind. They set their priorities, reinforce their objectives, and create a mental checklist that keeps them on track. That person moves with purpose, executes efficiently, and achieves results that seem almost effortless compared to those who drift through life. The power of focus also magnifies your ability to learn. When your attention is directed, when your mind is concentrated, you absorb information more effectively, make connections faster, and retain knowledge longer. Learning without focus is inefficient, inconsistent, and often frustrating. But learning with focus transforms every moment into an opportunity for growth. That is why self-directed focus, fueled by intentional self-talk, is a superpower in a world overflowing with information, tasks, and obligations. Finally, focus allows you to create your life on your own terms. It allows you to pursue your goals without being pulled off course by noise, distractions, or other people's agendas. It allows you to execute your vision with precision and consistency. And the starting point of that focus is the conversation you have with yourself. The voice inside you is your guide, your motivator, and your compass. When you speak with clarity and intention, you create a mental environment that supports achievement, growth, and fulfillment. So I want you to ask yourself, how intentional is my focus? How often do I allow distractions to hijack my attention? How often do I guide myself toward my highest priorities instead of drifting with impulses? The answers to these questions determine whether you will achieve extraordinary results or settle for ordinary outcomes. Because the truth is simple. The person who masters their focus, who cultivates it intentionally through self-talk, and who protects it fiercely, controls their outcomes, their growth, and their destiny. And that power starts from the voice within.